A lot of organizations, want to get started on this. Maybe you're watching this module because you've been tasked with developing an external report or a CSR report for your organization. And a lot of organizations make a mistake of they jump in with 2 feet and they take a ready, shoot, aim approach. And what you really don't want to do is, do that, because before you start on your external report, you first want to do some stakeholder engagement and determine materiality. You want to determine what are those issues that are most material to our organization, what's most important, where are our biggest impacts, and you want to find out, what do our stakeholders want to know? What do they care about? I'll give you an example. We worked with an organization that really wanted to get its community and environmental message out. It put together an 80-page, 4-color, beautiful report, and they hadn't done stakeholder engagement and determined materiality. And we kept saying to them, please do not do this. You need to go back and do your stakeholder engagement. You need to find out how people are going to engage with this report, and do they care about some of these issues before you spend all this time writing and gathering data. And they're like, no, we need to get this out in the marketplace. Our board needs to see it. We got to get it out there right away. And they did do that. And it was definitely a ready, shoot, aim approach. What they found out was, when they did the stakeholder engagement at the end, was that 99 out of 100 people did not even read the report because it was too long. Most of the people didn't read anything beyond the graphics and the photos, so all the data they had gathered didn't make sense. A lot of the terminology they were using was too industry specific and didn't connect with their layperson customer. So these were all things that you want to identify and understand before you get started. So I'm going to now talk to you about how do you do stakeholder engagement so you can avoid that scenario that I just talked about. When you're doing your stakeholder engagement, you determine materiality, you want to find out, what do our stakeholders care about? Where are our largest impacts? What are we going to be hitting from a legal or regulatory or maybe a public policy manner? What are peer-based norms within our industry? What does everybody do? When you think about it, back in the 80s, when car companies were saying quality is job one, and most of the companies were doing it, but one came about to it like 3 or 4 years later, them doing it, it's like, yeah, it's just a norm now. You need to find out what societal factors are that have implications. Where's the opportunity for innovation? And most of all, where does this alignment with their company values? Where does sustainability align with our mission and goals? In its most simple forms, stakeholder engagement is a 4-step process. You need to identify, who your stakeholders are and what the issues are. You need to engage them. Then you need to validate, are their concerns true? And then you need to not only report it out, but you need to review and constantly revisit and constantly be in contact with your stakeholders. A lot of organizations say, well, we know what our stakeholders care about, so let's not waste the time. But the reality is, you need to engage your stakeholders because you have to define your report content materiality. You want to get a variety of different perspectives. You're also going to uncover where are stakeholders having different problems, and they might have a lot of solutions. You get an external impression. You may be thinking you're doing poorly in one area, but your stakeholders are doing great. I like to think of, we worked with a large government lab, and they were really concerned about disclosing a certain data point because they were, thought it was very embarrassing that they had this issue, one issue out of 6,000 employees over 3 years. And then we explained to them and engaged their stakeholders. Stakeholders thought, no, we think the world of you, and the fact that you've only done one over 3 years, that's no big deal. And so having your stakeholders also help you, validate the topics that you're going to put in your report, and will help you uncover what you know and what you don't know. So your stakeholders are going to be defined to a degree. Basically, are they interested and affected by your organization's impacts? Can they influence the outcomes? And are they invested in your success or failure as an organization? There's an old proverb out there that if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, you got to go together. And it couldn't be any more true in terms of sustainability. If you're trying to do external reporting or you're trying to implement sustainability, you need to understand how your stakeholders think. How do they define sustainability? How do your own people define sustainability? What's important to them financially, social, environmentally, and what is not? Now, I've mentioned stakeholders, and for every organization, let's be clear, there's going to be different primary and secondary stakeholders. But for most organizations, your stakeholders are your customers, your employees, your suppliers, your investors, and maybe your community partners. Your secondary stakeholders are, other organizations that are out there whether they be industry associations, the media, creditors, groups that might be protesting you, or any other group that's relevant to you. But the important thing is for you to figure out within your own organization, take the time right now to just list who are our primary and who are our secondary stakeholders. Who do we most care about and can have the biggest impact on us and we affect the most? And who do we, kind of impact but not as much? Those are your secondary stakeholders. And when you're engaging your stakeholders, it's important, get the right people at the table. Don't just bring your friends. Everyone is going to tell you how great they are. Make sure you get a cross-functional group of people so that when you're discussing issues, you can get broad topics. And you want to have it right size. You want to definitely not only be telling your message, but you need to be listening. You need to be recording what they're saying. You need to be capturing it. And then most importantly, when you do stakeholder engagement, is you're trying to develop your external reporting, follow up with your stakeholders. Get their feedback, develop your report, but also report back to them as to where you are in the process. When your report comes out, make sure you share it with them. Let them know how valuable their feedback is, because there's nothing worse than asking for someone's input and then never hearing from them again. There are a variety of ways that you can engage your stakeholders, and it all comes down to what's your time frame, what's your budget, and how much effort do you want to put in this. So there's a whole variety of ways you can do it, from having an email address on your website, to having an intranet site for your employees to engage on it. You could send out a survey to your customers or your suppliers. You can have it in focus groups. You can have in-person meetings. You could have supplier summits. There's all different ways you can engage your stakeholders. But what you need to know is what's our most effective way for getting the information we're going to need for external reports. And so not only what's the best way, what's the most efficient way, and what's going to be the most cost-effective way of doing it. You don't want to just put it out in a survey and say, well, we hit all of our stakeholders, but you're hitting them at that superficial level. Consequently, you're also not going to be able to have one-on-one conversations with everybody either. So you want to be picking who are the primary stakeholders that we need to be engaging with and how best do we do that. Now let's talk about materiality and how to determine what's most material or what's most important and impactful to your organization. There's several different ways. You can do qualitative and sit around with people, but you want to have some quantifiable results. You want to be able to understand how important are, environmental or social issues to the business that you're talking to. So there's a very good map for how to determine materiality that SASB, which is the Sustainable Accounting Standards Board, they have a materiality map that lays out, what are the relative priorities around sustainability issues on an industry by industry basis. So if you're unsure about your industry, go to the SASB website and check out this materiality map, because they've actually gone through and said, hey, these are issues that are of higher materiality that industry working groups are looking at, and these are ones that are lower materiality, not as important. So that's a great way of, first step, and you can see how different organizations and different industries are weighting their different topics of materiality. But the gist of it is if you think about it from an X and Y axes, you want to think, what are the issues that are most significant to your stakeholders, and what are the issues that are most significant to your organization? And whatever is going to be in that upper right-hand quadrant, those are the issues that you need to be talking about. Those are the issues of high significance to both parties. The ones down the lower left quadrant, those are nice to have, but again, they're low significance to both organizations. So as you visualize materiality, a lot of times, just plot it on an X and Y diagram. Use Excel and put it into a function, and boom, you'll see what's most important to your organization from a materiality standpoint as it regards sustainability. This is an example of L'Oreal and what they published in one of their sustainability reports. And as you can see up in the upper right-hand corner, these are the type of information and these are the type of issues that are being most asked about in terms of stakeholders and what are the topics most relevant to L'Oreal's business.